So here I am with E.A. Koetting from Become a Living God, and I would like to open with the same chant as before, except this time, after 2 years, finally I have some numbers to it, so have any numbers in English this time. That's fine with you. So here I am with E.A. Koetting from Become a Living God.
It is coming through a little choppy. I'm not sure if I've still got you there.
Okay. I had the other thing on and it echoed on me, so I wanted to shut that off so it didn't keep that. So if that's fine, I'd like to start as before.
Yeah.
Okay. Vdoz Gzhz vdoz Daemoniacus Vmmh Okay. So before I, start asking questions and stuff, I'd like to open by saying what I mean by my meme. It can probably be the Become a Living Demon thing can probably be referred to what the ONA and some branches would call Atzoth, which apparently is derived from an Arabic name, which Goap, it's found 39 times in the Quran, but the Temple of Blood specifically recommends 4 passages to be learned. Sort of an air theme, then a fire theme, and then a water theme, and then a earth theme. So it's sort of a, there's human Satanism on the balance, I guess, and becoming, of course, because just like as I said, something I reported earlier today, that we just don't do one thing and then that's it. A lot more to do. We're gone,
Yeah, no, so when you look at the most basic elements of ceremony, of occult ceremony, one of the basic tools is obviously the altar, and one of the rules of the altar is that it maintains balance, and so you do balance out the elements as well as the actual elements, but anything that you place on the altar, if there's a balance that's offset by an object on your altar, then either that's a divination telling you something, or that you are manifesting that kind of imbalance for a reason, hopefully. But yeah, no, that's that all makes sense, and it is. I've been returning a lot lately to the more basic fundamental practices, and those seem to have the most depth and are the most universal.
Well, an interesting thing that I've noticed looking at different Egyptian things, just not just the stuff that I mentioned on my channel, because my channel, as much as I'd like to be a wider view, it still ends up being a fragment of my studies and stuff, is that some of the ancient Egyptian kings and temples and stuff, they openly had celestial and all that. They tried to put it all there and try to work with it all at the same time. Some rulers, much Church of Hermetic Sciences kind of work the Goetia and the Shemhem Forosh angels together, sort of.
Yeah, I in this temple here, I specifically don't call on angels by their angelic manifestations. They're just not welcome here. But I will go call them outdoors. Outdoors, I find is better for them, anyways. So So there is that interesting sometimes need to put that barrier between different systems as you're operating within them.
Yeah, for some reason I have not. I mean, there's other rooms and stuff that I have. I like angelic Chimham side and stuff. I've done not as much as Goetia. I've done research and stuff into it, but whenever I've felt like doing something, it's been like out in the park or somewhere other than here. So it's interesting that even though it wasn't, I've just never had the feeling to do that sort of working in here, but I've done other things. Of course, there's this, angel is a super broad word. It's like you don't really know what people are saying half the time when they mean angel. It's like in the Middle Ages, there was an angel of adultery. That can't be the highest sort of angel that we're thinking of. And if you look at the Enochian, they're kind of capricious, and some of them have. It's like if you go through the governors have minions, just like the other.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When I undertook the Abramelin operation, in I think it was 2007 that I went that, the manifestation of the elect spirits and then eventually I wouldn't even call it a manifestation of the Holy Guardian Angel, but because it was an invocation for sure. But the internal manifestation, the experience that I had was not of a holy being at all. That it was actually a pretty intense, fiery entity, and so there is the only issue with the language is that it's been injected with religion, and religion has co-opted all of these things, obviously. So without that, we could probably have a closer definition of what angel and demon means. But even that aside, these are interesting terms that are very evocative for the Western imagination. And I think that's probably more important than anything is to stimulate the internal self in order to seek the shift in reality that we're desiring, hopefully the shift in ourselves.
Well, definitely one of the things that's well, for me and for other people, one of the things about your channel is as much as anything else, or more than anything else, for a lot of people, it's evocative. It provokes things, and since you leave your comment section open, that's further enhanced and multiplied. I mean, if once you get past the become a living meme and some comments like that, it kind of.
I'm sorry, your audio cut out there at the very end of your last statement.
Oh, I was saying that one of the things that I and a lot of people turn to your channel for is its evocative nature. It brings out things in us, and then we comment to each other, and that brings out things that weren't even in the video, and we kind of make connections and stuff like that.
Yo, no, absolutely. That's I'm a huge fan of art, and I feel like what I do is barely approaching art. I mean, I try to have that art. I try to have an artistic approach to the video and to everything that I do, for sure. But I understand that there are real artists that are very good. And when I stand in front of a great piece of art, or even better, when I participate with a great piece of art, because the best art is participatory, I have to. So sometimes I don't like the art, but I appreciate it. That it moves me, stimulates me, makes me have a conversation with the person next to me. Sometimes makes me. The wheels are still turning about a couple pieces of art I saw nearly a year ago. That I was at an event and came across some pieces of art that disturbed me, and it planted a seed. And I hope that I do first hope to teach people, and then I hope to affect people, and then I guess after that I hope to stimulate something in people. I guess that maybe that's my own personal hierarchy of desire for how to make my job fulfilling to myself. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I guess that someone else I've been trying to interview, especially since he's been removed from YouTube, is that he sort of made a comparison between John Dee and Edward Kelly. Is that no, I don't remember. I guess I don't. You know, I was the one who was trying to make. I would summarize and I'd make poems and I'd try to wiggle around and some other stuff, but that's what things out here is for. But he's done sort of the if you ever saw the thing from the Nargargle channel, some of it's you know, some of it's very moving in its musical sort of, he talks about crossing the fence and stuff like that, and puts music to it, and it's like I'm going crazy sort of music, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about this in our last visit, but for a bit I got really into overutilizing special effects to try to get that point. Because when you enter into these magical states, your consciousness, not even your consciousness, but all of you changes, really. It can't just be a change of mind or a change of heart, but also a physiological shift. Things within you start moving and reassembling, and your perspective of reality completely changes so intensely that it can't even be described, and video does give some ways of showing it, but it is a fine line to walk between the demonstration of an internal state and just complete cheeseball, rubber monsters, which I feel like I've in the past erred on the side of rubber monsters a little too much, but it is an attempt to stimulate, for sure, to awaken something.
Well, it wasn't until I was 19 or something till I saw this, and I happened to see the first Ghoulies movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they got a bigger budget, and it just became more cheesy. But that is sort of, and then if you get too arrogant, you just want to boss everything around and whatnot, and you're like, and you don't, and you're not paying attention how it's reacting with others, and then but he kind of steps aside from that. But it's an interesting movie despite its rubber. It turned out that from that movie, a lot of people in TV shows and movies that you see now and you saw 10 years ago and stuff, that's kind of Hideaway was like the next decade's thing with Silverstone at Jurassic Park and whatnot. But Heaven and Hell, that kind of
I think the movie Ghoulies, I could be wrong, but I think that's the first place that I saw the 5-pointed star, the pentagram, you being used as a protective symbol. I think I believe that's Ghoulies. It might have been Gremlins, but I think it was Ghoulies. Whichever one it was, that did stimulate something for sure. You often have to excuse the quality of movies because when we're used to these ridiculously expensive productions, sometimes we forget that a part of it is to use our imaginations. This is why I love older films. It does rely. I mean, Hitchcock is a great example. Relies on what's not seen, but what's going on internally, that you're projected into the scenario. And I don't know that I would compare Ghoulies to Hitchcock, but sometimes we do have to excuse the production quality, especially when contrasted against the ridiculously expensive films that are out there now.
Well, to me, it was to a degree like the sort of realism of what the sort of practice was, and I think as soon as the Visago Millennium Prophecy came out, and I got the well, I don't think the prophecy has any authority over me, but it was, I think Ghoulies is what got me into other stuff. But like some stuff, the quality's low and you don't even notice it. It's like, I know I have issues. Maybe I get nervous and something, but I'm sure some people can move along with it and maybe not notice, much like the Israel regarding material, if you've ever heard that. People complain if there's a chat board, or now that it's posted on YouTube or something now, if there be people complaining about, it's like, follow along with it and make it work, not just, it's, and then the really good stuff, people are like, oh, well, they're not even engaging with it other than it sounds nice.
Well, I think that's the issue with consumerism versus participatory involvement. That when you're just consuming, that you tend to get really. It's easy when you're just a consumer to sit back and to judge art in an interesting way, or judge information, or judge all of these things when you're just consuming it. When you become a participant in it, though, it changes the whole thing. Then you are forming it, And I do hope that with all of the work that people take it and use it. That's what it's there for. Because honestly, the real teaching is in the doing. I can tell you the steps of the ritual all day long, and I'm going to be honest with you, the steps of the ritual don't vary that much between ritual to ritual. You can plug a lot of different things into one ritual template and have a good outcome, but it's the middle space. It's what's happening between the desire and the ritual, and the outcome being the point of losing yourself in the reality that you're creating. Whether that's the reality you're creating as a future occurrence that you're stimulating through the ritual, or the receipt of knowledge, or a heightened state, or whatever it is that the ritual is for, you got to lose yourself in it completely, and that can be difficult. But you do have to participate. This is a interesting reality in that it demands our participation. It demands the observer to observe it.
Well, and aside from the okay, I want this experience sort of thing, it's like some of that stuff. I was just trying to get my life together how I wanted it to get together, but once one achieved a certain sense of balance, that going into the difference between what people say when they mean magic and when people say when they mean religion, is that some people say, oh, magic is when you're active. It's like, well, you want to be active in it rather than just you're saved and it's been done for you by this intercessor, priest or something. It's like you can't have the sexual stuff going on. Sometimes people can see your hair standing on end or your eyes dilate or something like that, or you shake or something, but there's sensual things and then psychic things that that don't happen. You open your eyes and you see stuff in terms of what you're seeing, and then there's this spiritual thing where it's not that you drop off your body or anything like this. This is still there. It's you're still operating on these different levels, but awareness, and it's like you hear some of the descriptions. It's like your flesh crawling. It's like there's a badness of that, and then there's this really good sense that I understand why people ruin their life with drugs. Experiences. It's like if this person had to try and if they can get this once a year, and they have nothing else in their life, I understand.
Yeah. And there is. You posed probably the great question in the study of the occult is what is magic, and I have liked in the past to pretty much solidly just define it as using non-physical action to stimulate physical results. Something along those lines. But that's really that's been challenged more and more as I dive into my own path workings and realize there is a mystical sense to it. There is a religious sense to it. there is a devotional sense to it, and there is that sorcerous sense to it. And so it's all of these things. And so I think for me, what would the dividing line that where you cross from religion into spirituality, or into magic, I'm sorry, where you cross from religion into magic, is personal participation. I mean, whether you're praying to Jesus and Mary, or you're, performing japa meditation, or performing the bornless rite, it doesn't matter. These are all modes that, if you're fully engaging it, you're going to arrive at a very distinct outcome. And so it is the participation in my mind that draws that line between the two. And so a priest is in fact, if they're doing it right, is a magician or a sorcerer. They just would never admit it, of course.
And of course, it's like the high priest used to be the hierophant, or the hierophant, or however people pronounce that. But it's like, yeah, even in and the Protestant, for the most part, Protestant churches are like anti-ritualistic, ritualistic. Okay, I don't want to interrupt. So since before we get too far about something that was mentioned, I guess, what do you think happened during, after that?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Did I say will, or I think I wrote that wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me get the idea, the gist. I would say most of the time it's going to be what you expect it to be. There is a terrifying darkness that occurs when consciousness is completely given up, and then you burst forth from that darkness into not the astral plane, but kind of an overlap into a more subtle field within this physical realm. I think the variations, the very terms for the different planes are too confusing, because people, and even calling them planes is not necessarily the right way of looking at it either, because they're not stacked, they're immersive. But anyways, so you begin that shift. Now, if you're, let's say, a Mormon person, since that's the religion of my upbringing, I'll use that as a reference. You die, and there are specific instructions that are given to people in the LDS temple on what to do upon your death, and how to meet angels that are going to carry you to the celestial kingdom, and that's all very real. There's actually exact instructions that are given in the Doctrine and Covenants on how to enter the celestial kingdom through the fiery gates. And you can do this before you die. That's the part of this that's awesome, is that you can do it all before you die. But if upon death your mindset is trapped in this idea of what it's going to be like for you, I think your consciousness is going to experience that, at least for a short while. And that short while is basically just the duration that it takes for your astral body to break down without being sustained by a living anchor. There are reflections and shadows of people in this world that we mistakenly call, ghosts, that we think these are the spirits of the dead, and they're really just echoes. The eternal self is, by default, is a spark of the divine that's not yours, and it returns to the divine, which is why in all of my teachings, I try to teach people to embrace the dissolution of the self, absolutely, when you reach that point and when you can. But then there's also a pulling back together of yourself, a rising from your own ashes, and recreating yourself and separating yourself from source after that. But for most people, there is, I think, a recycling, that you return to source. And interestingly, the visualization that is popping into my mind as I'm talking now is is of a great ocean with clouds that the water is constantly being pulled up and recycled and pulled up and recycled. And no teardrop is ever actually reborn. It's made into the whole, and then a new teardrop is formed. That's a lot of how I understand the afterlife or the between life process to be.
Well, certainly, it's just like you can have physical conditions because of what's going, because of your thoughts, words, and deeds, and that sort of thing that arise. I would definitely think that would be a crystallization of things, and it's like one of the things that one worries about, and one sees even mainstream examples behind me of like the person who comes to the afterlife. Oh, I'm not worthy sort of stuff. And it's like, and if you die in that, I mean, God is going to accept you if you like this. It's better to say, hey, do good and, go about your life like that and, just shame yourself, basically.
There is something to be said about that degree of humility and that degree of humility coupled with the devotion. I will tell you what, when I have performed baneful magic curses, and when they have resulted in the coincidental news that a person has died, the effect is always humility. The what strikes me is always humility, always a sense of, almost bringing me to my knees. Wow, this power is so much. And I do get that a lot. I get that most with baneful magic, I think. But even with certain evocations, pushing the envelope of magic to the next level, the most intense, most life-changing rituals for me are always concluded with that sense of crushing humility. And I don't know, maybe that's just, maybe that's returning to the human form, the human self after the transfiguration into the divine self in the ritual. I don't know what's up with that humility, but it is interesting. And there is a certain release that seems to get hit when you hit that point, where it's almost like an induction of the dark night of the soul, that you're inducing yourself into this hopeless state. And then there's a snapping point, and there should be that snapping point. If there's not, then you haven't hit rock bottom, I guess.
Well, sort of the breaking. One doesn't. It's like some people will think that you just. Well, some rituals have these terms like you're going to be reborn or not reborn, however we want, and all this other stuff, and these people die. That's not really what's going on, or maybe they're, I've heard that some of them they're fighting it as they're going, and sort of the as the Eastern people talk about the goes, and but they're establishing their identity at the same time. It's not just it's sort of what's meant by the term lawsuit, if one's, the term where Sufi, the term Sufi kind of, Sufi means world, but people, that soul, but it's not destroy yourself, you.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing when you're bound to ideologies of really complete dualism. It's the Western mind is way too enmeshed in dualism to really understand a whole lot. We're looking at, we've got God or the devil, we've got good and evil, black and white, we've got all of these, even body and soul are thought to be in opposition. When we look at more ancient systems, though, I think that's where we get a clearer picture of what the human being is, and that's even difficult because the human being, we are we are a miracle creation. We are not accidental. We are a miracle creation, and trying to understand ourselves is so absurd. Even the prospect of it is absurd, that we should try to understand ourselves. But that's our entire undertaking. Whether it's through science, as we're exploring the external world, we're really trying to understand ourselves. Same thing with all of these mystical and magical arts. But it's really kind of a futile thing. I mean, we can understand, we can get a couple steps closer, but it is an ongoing mission for sure.
Well, if you look at the sort of all the organisms and cells and whatnot that make up your typical being, you're talking a 10-digit number, I think. Did I ask what your belief is about pre-existence, or the spiritual side of being born?
I'm not sure if you asked that last time or not, but just kind of briefly, it does tie so directly into the last question that it's easy to kind of wrap up a summary. Is that it's a cyclical thing. Like I said, it's the moisture being pulled into the clouds and then rained back down. But there is a point, especially a point when you hit human consciousness, that you can start to solidify your own temporary or samsaric identity with Atman, with your soul, and you can start to kind of force yourself back over and over and over again. So I mean, is there a pre-existence? There is, as much as there's pre-existence for everything. But I got a mountain outside my house, and it's a sandstone mountain, and it's composed of sand. I mean, it's little tiny pieces of sand that, before it became a mountain, it existed as sand. And I mean, obviously, from a physical point of view, we're not much different. We are composed of combination of things, but the soul, the essence of who we are eternally. I mean, that not only is there a pre-existence to that, there's an eternal nature to that. It goes beyond time. It's not like it occurred, like we occurred before. We always have been. And we've been in various states and in various permutations of ourselves, but and this is the form that I believe that we've evolved to. That this human state's not a test or a trial, or it's not even a something that we're supposed to pass or anything. This is our evolved state. This is the next phase of our spiritual evolution, is being physical.
Well, one of the things I personally believe about our the before life sort of thing, it's not that we're standing around with the lords of karma and we're saying, I want that body and that sort of thing. I think that's it seems that humanity is kind of different in its sense of responsibility per se, what it's going to do with its what it's going to do with its role. And I think before we got here, we all said, yeah, I want that opportunity. At the very least, that sort of thing going on, I think.
I would like to think so. I think there does need to be room left for chaos. That man, I'll tell you what. Well, and here's maybe where we could use to take a step back out of the human state, the human consciousness, is that the way that this brain that's attached to this body perceives time and recurrence and causality is completely flawed. It's only it relies on only a sliver of what's actually happening. And I think when we take a step outside of this four-dimensional space-time complex, that we're able to start to maybe see, I don't want to say greater reality, because reality is, there's no greater or lesser or anything like that, but a maybe clearer picture, or we bring the camera out and we can see what's maybe unseen previously. And so, there's the God self is capable of organizing things and manifesting realities in a way that is staggering to the human consciousness. That when you, even when you perform a ritual, and I'm going to assert that ritual magic does produce an effect. It does produce an effect in the substantial world, and when it does, the human mind is always blown away by it, or it should be. I read through my journals and I'll find, I performed this ritual and it was for this effect, and you get blown away by the concurrence of reality, the validation of the external world in this weird, crazy thing that I did in my temple a couple weeks ago, But it is always there's always that shock of, oh wow, how did that even happen? And when that does happen, it is, once again, it brings me back to humility.
Well, it's like one of the definitions I've heard of chaos magic, other than trying to switch your beliefs and practices all the time to have different things occur, is like you set up an order and then you let it go, and or you or you allow whatever to do whatever with it, basically. You work what regardless of what the form is. You're picturing a tarot card or some others. Give over in a way that allows it to be scattered and just replaced. That's kind of definitely leaves it a less limited sort of practice.
Yeah, I find that a lot of magicians will pigeonhole their success negatively, where I want the admiration of my peers, but I want that to be in this format, through this career, and through these symbols. And a lot of times, if you do have to leave that wiggle room, once again, for chaos, because what your conscious mind is trying to do is often play with little knobs that we don't understand. And so and that is a good argument for performing divination along with any ritual, is to really tap into what your omniscient self has to say about the situation, and how that guides you, how your intuition guides you. If I sit down to perform a ritual and I don't feel that Shakti essence running through me, if I don't feel like I just plugged myself into the power generator, I have to ask myself, what's going on with the ritual? Do I have not enough information? Am I not prepared enough? But if the power is not flowing, and if the intuition is kind of putting the brakes on, I've got to listen to that. And that's I've been able to bring my success rate in magic up to just about perfect by listening to that voice and allowing room for magic to work.
I don't know whether it's harder being a person with autism or easier. We're supposed to have higher levels of brain chemicals and be able to look at things from different directions. So I guess it's harder and easier at the same time. Is that, I guess, my first spiritual experience was that I was seeing through myself as these different layers. This physical being that realized that I wasn't really losing anything, or I didn't really have to lose anything. My mind didn't have anything to disagree with. Emotionally, I was okay with it. But then, for the first time in my life, it was like I was the soul spirit that was aware of this thing, and it's like I know what it's like, but I can't imagine it. But we got to, but that as much as anything kind of reminds me that just like the psychological diagrams that remind us that most of what we're perceiving through this body, we're not conscious of what the body's picking up. Most of what the body's picking up, just a fraction of it.
Yeah, well, and when you train, for instance, for you train for martial arts, or for anything really, what you're trying to do through the repetitive training is turn the mind off and get to a point where you can, you've already anticipated every motion and attack, and you're already prepared to counter-strike. Our brains are absurd. Our mind's ability to calculate information instantaneously is ridiculous. And hopefully it looks like they're working on quantum computers that are someday going to rival the human brain, but it's going to be a while. We've got something pretty unique that we're operating with. This is our greatest magical tool, is our minds. So
I think there's a good indication that they're already kind of there. Just like it turns out, some of this stuff where they said there were little. The government had little. Oh, now we finally can buy a zip drive like that. Not a zip drive, the USB thing. I guess they're not zip drives anymore. But uniqueness of the human brain. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell what they come up with, considering that it could be even a few decades behind what some branches of some governments and stuff are doing. But,
oh yeah, no, it's impossible to gauge anything by what's available to the public, for sure.
It is kind of freaky that you get these different home devices that you talk to and ask questions, and some of the questions that people ask them it turns out sometimes people will catch them talking to each other when you're gone, or one about the other, and then it will end another. Often.
Yeah, no, I've actually taken those devices out of my home. But here's the thing: is I still have a cell phone, and the cell phone does. If you have a conversation with somebody, and you go to Google what you want to look up what something related to the conversation you were just having, it's kind of spooky to see how often it autofills for you the subject you were just talking about. And go ahead.
I think the thing is, like, for example, because they're always it's not just what you're doing, it's what you're trying to do and stuff. And it's like recently you type the word part, right? And recently I've got the ability to finish type without trying to autocorrect me. But around the week before Valentine's, whenever I try to type the word part, it would, even when I got the R in, it would try to autocorrect me to panties. But now that Valentine's Day is over with, it doesn't do that. But as far as it doing stuff, as far as what I know I'm doing or something, it's like I will look for something, and once I find something like that, it will instantly tell me where 5 of them are in at least that side of the state. But before that, it's like one in 200 miles, and then they'll tell me 7.
Yeah, I think we as a society and as human beings have to be very careful about gauging our reality by the reports of our reality. It's pretty intense to notice the huge difference between what's being reported and what's actually happening on the ground. It's good to be aware of what's going on worldwide, but at the same time, I neglect that awareness of what's going on worldwide in order to bring my focus back to the things that are tangible around me, the microcosm that I can firmly mesh with, understand, and grasp. And obviously, that expands as we expand and as we grow. But I do like to keep in mind that what you're seeing in reports and what's on the news and what's online is not always true. Most of the time, it's the opposite of what's true.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out to all of us who took the class, I mean, senior year of high school, there was some political science, or I forget what it was called, that we had to take. It's like basically told us a lot of this stuff that sounds like a lie on the television. You don't know the talk, or you don't remember it. You know, you think, but again, it's this perception like that. But corporations, whether it's humanitarian, how they treat their, how they treat their employees or the environment or whatever, there's people deciding things. And I've found out that Walmart, for example, knows that it can have some of the top selling books in certain areas, but it specifically doesn't carry these and stuff. So there's something going on more than just reporting and making money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And there's a fellow that I followed his work a few years ago that's really interesting. At the very least, he's interesting. It's Michael Tsarion. And I think his website used to be Terroscopes. I don't know if it still is, but he's an alternative historian and has some different views on the evolution of the human species and a west to east migration rather than east to west migration of humankind. But one of his programs that he put out was called the Subversive Use of Sacred Symbolism, and in that he does a really good expose of the use of these magical symbols in seeding ideas into the public. You even go to certain fast food chains and they'll have scripture verses underneath the fry box and whatever. Well, the same thing's being used over and over and over again with magical symbols. We can see the use of Norse symbols that have been used politically, religiously, and in a lot of different ways. And even on one of the best automobiles ever built, a Mercedes-Benz hosts the symbol that invokes the Valkyrie. So these are all everywhere. They're seated in our reality. Magic and ritual is ongoing around us. It's just a matter of, once again, whether we want to just participate in it or consume it.
I think this has been answered, but so have you had a spiritual experience? I mean, in terms of of your non-physical beingness of that. You said astral, and some people may say that, think of that as psychological. So what would be the difference if that's what you mean?
The difference between a psychological and an astral thing?
What's between spiritual, and have you had a spiritual experience of yourself as this non-physical, non-mental?
Oh, absolutely. I've had that experience intentionally through approaching things like soul travel, and the astral plane. I mean, it's real. Whether it's I think what we're once again faced with the issue that we're constantly confronted with dualism. Is it in your mind or is it real? Is it internal or is it external? Those aren't. It's not a fair question because they're one and the same. What's going? All devas exist here within the human body, but that doesn't mean within your physical corporality. It means you're with who you are, your omnipresent self, with your human being, which is eternal, which is unlimited. And so as you tap into that unlimited part of yourself, that eternal part of yourself, I mean, all things open up and the internal and the external merge. This is really the goal, I think, of the highest forms of magic and mysticism and spirituality you can attain, is a complete merger of the external and the internal, a complete merger of the upper and the lower. And I've achieved ridiculous states that I can't even describe, that I mean, even saying I know that they were real and not just psychological phenomenon, to me is a silly thing to even say. Any more than this reality here is not just psychological phenomenon. It is in one degree and one interpretation. All of this is just an illusion being constructed by my observation of it. But even that's not really the fullness of reality. That's just an easy way for us to understand the dynamic nature of reality.
Well, certainly one of the confusing things is when one looks into Thelema, the terminology. Okay, you don't want the true will, for example, is not something, it's not imposed by yourself and it's not imposed from the outside. So you're trying to figure out, okay, is this purely invented by me or is this what I am and supposed to be? Or is it something that's been told on me and am I supposed to, so that kind of gives me some benefit.
Yeah. There's always a question of like, are you inventing a thing or are you channeling or receiving it? It's in working with Marbas, for instance, the Goetic demon Marbas, he's a genius engineer, mechanic, can teach you how machines work and can also teach you how to create new inventions. And in doing this, one of the things that he claims in my encounters with him is that the human mind is just receiving constantly. That's you can visualize the human being as being a field, a vortex, and all possibilities intersect within the individual. And so it's just a matter of what we want to grab onto and look for. That's the thing is, as soon as our attention is locked onto a thing, we tend to find the answers that relate to that. If Tony Robbins is a cool guy. He's a great influence on me, I think. One of the things that he taught in one of his lectures was he says, all right, so think about brown and all the brown things you've ever seen in your life. And isn't brown such an ugly color? And he talks about brown for a few minutes. And he goes, now, I want you to go ahead and look around the room and see if you can spot the color pink. And all you're seeing is brown everywhere. Brown everywhere. What we're focused on is what we tend to manifest and see. And really what we're doing in a lot of ritual and meditation and spiritual practices, we're tuning our attention to a specific frequency in order to induce a certain change. And sometimes that change is physical, sometimes it's not. But either way, the question of, is it in my head or is it actually occurring? That's not a question that is even interesting to me to consider. And it's not helpful to the magical process either.
So what you've experienced, is it just is it dreams and visions, or do you see a difference between the two?
I'll tell you what, I have not pursued dream work nearly as diligently as maybe I could have. Maybe in the future I will. I've pursued dream work enough to be able to lucidly dream. I've got about a 2-week period of building myself up to being able to lucidly dream. If every night I'm doing the discipline, every night and day, because it is something that you need to focus on while you're awake, so that way you can bridge the waking and the dream state. But I guess I just didn't find that too productive, or I guess too interesting. And so not dreams, and I rarely consider dreams to be important when I have them. Some people have amazing, important dreams. I feel like my dreams are more of a decompression of just daily information. So when I have experiences, manifestations, there's a whole range to them. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as a feeling, a knowing that, for instance, my grandmother passed away when I was about 22, 23, and I could feel her presence in the room, and I could smell her perfume, and she had there were some words of wisdom that popped into my head in her voice, and now that I can dismiss that all as being a psychological something or another. but what she told me actually panned out in the real world to take effect, and was very helpful, to say the least. But I didn't see anything. It was a smell and a feeling and a voice in my head. But then in other occasions, I've had a materialization of a spirit in front of me that my eyes think they can see, my ears are certain they can hear, and even the physical world around me starts to validate it. You start to see the incense smoke that moves around the body that's not there, or there's a lot of times there is interesting physical phenomenon that's really hard to dismiss as being psychological or anything other than the materialization of the spirit or the opening of a gateway or whatever it is that's trying to be accomplished. That there is, almost every time there is something that will occur. I was performing ritual in here just today, and a breeze blew across the room just as I was invoking Asmodeus, and the incense that I had lit on the other side of the room drifted nicely and then spiraled right above where I'm sitting and performing the ritual. And that kind of stuff happens constantly. And so there is it's occurring, I think, I wouldn't say on all levels, but on multiple levels simultaneously.
Well, I definitely, I guess I've seen with myself and with others the difference. It's, the focus issue. It's like it's like people, whether they have it in a dream or they hear voices or something when they're awake, if they have a focus on something, then, things may come to them and say, hey, how about this? And how about this? And, but I guess you've answered a few other questions. The sound. Oh, well, I guess that was outside, I guess. Have you heard of within, or light within yourself?
Have I heard of the concept of a light within yourself?
I mean, have you experienced some sort of unusual lights within yourself or a sound coming from within?
Yes. Once again, in pushing towards that, those experiences through states of soul travel and aura expansion, etc. Yeah. While not trying to, just having spontaneous occurrences, I suppose I have, but nothing worth noting aside. I've actually experienced, I think, more striking. I've experienced the opposite. I've experienced manifestations of darkness rather than an inner light, that a darkness that manifests sometimes as a disc or a portal that's floating just off of, if I were to reach out and touch it, I can barely touch it with my fingertips. And this portal will manifest in different areas around me, and it's been noticed by myself and other people in person. And so I've had interesting manifestations of I wouldn't even say inner darkness, because once again, inner and outer are forms of false dialectic, but definitely have had experiences with that it's almost corporeal darkness. It's not just a flicker of something, but something that people will turn and watch evolve and become. Once again, it looks like a disc or a gateway. So that's to me, that kind of occurrence is much more interesting than like beaming with light. Every time you strengthen your astral body of light, every time you perform a ritual in which you're invoking light and power, especially when you're trying to get something done, that is a solar thing. When you're trying to push something into manifestation, that light does seem to radiate. That's. As far as I'm concerned, that should be the kind of par for the course for magicians to be able to trigger your own radiance, but to have these odd
particularly to picture it as you go around drawing things in the air and whatnot, whatever you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, and even with that, it's interesting because I remember reading Crowley, and he talked about drawing the letter T astral with his astral dagger on door of a circle of witches that was bewitching him. Whether or not this happened, I don't know. He's a storyteller. But regardless, I read that when I was like 15, and I thought that was so amazing. All you got to do is take what is this astral dagger? Where do I get it? And then I just take it and draw on a door. Well, I didn't understand until I practiced it enough that you do have to project that energy. You have to visualize that, and you have to seal it. You can visualize all day long. That's the great thing is you can sit and imagine things all day long, but when you create it and then seal it into place, that it becomes a part of reality, and then the resonance kicks in. But not until then. But there are steps of learning how to do that, and developing the ability to not only imagine it, but to move that energy through your system. It takes time and troubleshooting for sure.
One of the interesting things that for some people is a kind of a breakthrough is this breaking away from this moralizing of the light and darkness and just using which is it as it's the same. And yeah, for a lot of us, the dark, I like the darkest quarter of the year the best, really. Not only because I don't get sunburned and I sleep all night and be up all I can be up all day and not have to get any sleep during the day at all. That's always the case, but yeah, and you look at like edges of things and when you're seeing stuff like more subtle than the blackness of the flame, but kind of experiment with boundaries and different.
Yeah. Now
something.
One interesting thing about darkness as a spiritual or even cosmic concept is that light requires energy. It requires effort to produce, and darkness is the natural state that resumes once that energy is expended. And so there is a timelessness. And right now I'm working heavily with Kali, and as I do so, that she is the eternal timeless one, and that is intense to presence and to try to translate to the conscious mind. Almost impossible to translate to the conscious mind, but we do have to try.
Well, one interesting thing that I've never been able to do awake, I don't think, is that after 3 minutes, you get a third of your night vision. Add another 30 minutes, you get 2/3, and then 3 minutes in, about as strong as it's going to be. So there's people who they'll sit in a dark room and stuff, and stuff like that is that definitely some. Once you make it past 33 minutes, you're doing your ritual and all that, and things can flood like much easier, I guess, than they would earlier on. Of course, you're there with your eyes open and stuff, but and then it's interesting when you got people with you, and it's like you're not even telling them about it. You're carefully moving around in the dark and trying to find your thing. It's like people, you'll see the same thing in the same spot, and you're not even telling people until you're over there and your hand in the middle. It's like, oh, this thing feels this in this area feels same sort of weird or
Yeah, I was teaching I had a fellow come out here for my boot camp, my in-person training, and so I had him here at this temple, and I was teaching him how to do a clearing salt water, consecrate that, and I guided him through a few different methods, and I basically said that over in this corner over here, I hadn't consecrated that as my as a temple wall yet. It was just a wall, and so I said, go ahead and practice on that wall over there, but don't let the drops of water or anything, hit anything over on this side of the room. Well, so he gets done with the banishing, the practice of banishing, and he says, you know, he says there's something over there that needs to be banished, but you won't let me do that. So I don't know. He goes, you're trying to teach me, but you won't actually let me do the work. And I said, well, okay, so what do you feels like over there? And he points right over to the spot where my dog passed away about 6 months ago, and there's still the blood spot on the ground. There's the doggy door that she would come in and out of, and he described her. I mean, to a T. You know, black dog, border collie, describes her perfectly, and says, you know, her spirit's still lingering, or whatever that astral resonance is, or that psychic resonance is still there, and it could use to be banished. And I had known that. I had known that for a while. But it's like I didn't want to get rid of my dog and cast the last bit of it away, and you know, there was a lot of sadness there and whatever. But that was striking to me that, you know, he came out and was able to pinpoint that exact residual energy of a dog that passed away 6 months ago there, in that spot that was covered. You couldn't see the blood mark, you couldn't see the dog door. But anyways, there was. There are experiences like that a lot, and that's when always, yeah. There's been a lot of there's been too much psychologization of magic, where the Western mind is trying to make this make sense to the logical mind, and in so doing, robbing it of the magic itself. That sometimes we look at all of this and we just have to, at some point, recognize that something mysterious is going on, something supernatural is happening.
And when it comes to something to spiritual matters, it's like, well, even physical matters. Most of what we believe about even language use, it's like that's something we haven't verified ourselves. And there's some experiences. Hey, this person had this experience, whatever. Well, sometimes you're like, well, I don't think it has authority over my life, sort of thing. But you mentioned that something similar that happened to me in another place that I've done videos in, was that I guess it was because in a comparative sense that there were a couple spots in that building where you know, people thought, you know, something about this, but it was a comparative. I performed rituals and meditated pretty much everywhere, except I almost never in those couple spots. So therefore, they were like, something's kind of there, but they kind of like the energy of the rest of the place. But I don't think it. And then there's the idea of something, you know, some stuff may come back, go and come back, and go and come back, and you know.
Yeah, you know, so one of the issues I think people can get into with that, with that concept, is when you have an experience. Let's say, for instance, I feel like there's a presence developing over here, and I can feel like it's the demon Paemuwn. And so if I'm experiencing that, and then I look over to this guy and go, "What do you see?" And my whole focus then becomes on the validation of that reality. That can be problematic, because sometimes it's not validated. Sometimes it's not validated at the same time. I had a student that I was teaching how to soul travel, and he would go visit his brother, and he would have his brother put a can of vegetables or some canned food out on the table, and he would soul travel over to it and report back to his brother on what he had seen, and he had almost 100% failure rate, because it's not. There's a matter of the purity of intention, that if you're going to get what you are trying to get. Now, the problem is that the human being doesn't understand what we're trying to get. We're often reacting to impulses that we have no concept of what they even are, or what they mean. And so when you're dealing with trying to validate, and being tied up in the validation of your experience, of your gnosis, the gnosis itself seems to retreat into the background a bit.
Well, the Rumi poem about going in there and everybody reaches in and touches a different part of the elephant, but their understanding's the same way. But it's like until recently, maybe it's like Azazel was mainly known as in the peacock form. But if you look at that very same tradition, you have as a black dog with a white spot, snake, a big old snake again with a black with a white dot, and some other with the peacock form. The peacock hideous in the Judeo-Christian books, but it's like being like that. There would surely be like reaching your hand in at an elephant, but more so because whatever creature it wants to be, I guess. Tortoise form, I think they call.
Yeah, no, the whole that whole story changes when the elephant shifts form, depending on each individual and their expectations, and there are standard archetypes that are being pulled from with different spirits, obviously, but a lot of the details are meant for us to fill in. And so when we do this, I had a buddy come over that I would perform a lot of ritual with on a pretty regular basis, and he came over and he was fired up about working with Thoth, and I resisted the Egyptian system quite a bit at that point. So I said, no, I'm not interested. I'm a little busy today working with Lucifuge. And he goes, well, tell me about Lucifuge. And I said, well, okay. And so I started going through some of the characteristics, and he goes, gee, you know who that sounds a lot like? It's Thoth. I'm like, well, I don't have time for Thoth. After Lucifuge, I'm going to be working with Ningazida. Now, the whole time, I've got this cluster of entities that I was working with that all are basically they're more than an archetypal pattern. That this is the same entity that's manifested in different ways to different cultures with some very, very distinct characteristics that lead me to understanding that this is an individual, this is a being, and I was just calling it by different names. I didn't want to work with Thoth, but good God, I was working with every single other permutation of that same force. And so, yeah, when somebody looks over here and they don't see Azazel, whatever they do experience possibly is going to be Azazel manifesting to them. And once again, what they're experiencing this is why I really don't like group ritual unless it is done in a very, very specific way, I guess, is that there is too much of that looking into the eyes of everyone else, saying, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you trying to validate? There's too much validation that's going on. It's like crosstalk that's happening invisibly, and you can get so caught up in that you forget to lose yourself in the ritual. Ritual is, in my view, is very magic is very akin to sex, and in that you need to lose yourself in it. If you're sitting there worrying too much about the whole thing, you're just not going to be able to perform. And so there is a matter of just losing yourself in the romance of the ritual, letting it seduce you and carry you away.
Well, one of the things I haven't seen that so much as, there's some base of something, and then other people will try to, without figure out whether there's an idea of what's going to work. Experience builds as you keep doing what you're doing. It's not like you go over and do stuff, and I guess visiting OTO lodges and other places, and I haven't. One of the more common problem that it's experienced, and you want to get up and interact with it, but it's going to disrupt the group. And I guess, yeah, that could be the thing. It's like, I remember, the writing the Book of the Law ceremony. They read it, and I really got into it one time, and this other guy did too. And afterwards, we both went up to the altar to kind of see if we could feel what we were otherwise sensing up there. But of we waited till the whole thing. We waited till last whatever chapter was done before we went about and kind of engaged in experience. It's like the people that I've never been one of these people. It's like and it's state, and it's like, oh, I'm leaving things, and I'm.
Yeah, no, there is a matter of thrusting yourself into the ritual for sure, and if you're prompted, it is, and once again, the lens that I'm seeing a lot of things through at this point is through that Kali lens, and with that, the connection to Shiva and to Shakti is obviously strong, and if Shakti comes through and moves me in a particular way, and I resist that movement, or I resist that impulse, then I'm resisting Shakti, I'm resisting her blessings, I'm resisting her power, and I'm casting her off. And so as that power moves through you, you do have to listen to it and move with it. Sometimes it'll move you to sit still and focus your mind, but sometimes it moves you to pound your fists on the floor. And this is where the personalization of ritual is essential. Listening to what that power is inducing you to do, which does require getting out of yourself. And I think the best exercise that anybody can do to do that is dancing, especially dancing in public. That's horrifying. Something that it took me a long time to get to, but a yogi that I've been working with suggested it strongly as a method of getting over a lot of things. And if you can dance in public and be a complete ridiculous asshole on the dance floor and just do your thing without being concerned about what others are thinking or saying or whatever, then you can probably approach group ritual and be just fine. But a lot of people have a lot of reservations.
Well, particularly the dance thing, I've kind of tried to separate things into just dance, music, all sorts of things into, well, there's the completely secular, just entertainment, and then there's the healing sort of function and the devotion side of the things. And it's like, particularly once you stop trying, I'm going to entertain. It's letting a lot of the trance dancing, whether to relieve pain or what you're trying to do with it. It's like, it really does look kind of ridiculous to, unless it happens to be some.
Yeah. Well, and it is, I know that I'm externalizing a lot of my own projections of myself onto all of humanity, but I'll say that the Western individual is pretty bent on what other people are thinking about us, and so to internalize and personalize that, I know that that's been a huge overcoming of myself that I've had to do and still do is to get over what people think of you, how people react to what you're doing, the need to have people pat you on the back and validate whatever it is that you feel like you need validated. It's all useless. It's all a huge trap. So it's best to shirk that off as quickly as you can.
That, and you never know what effect you may be having. It's like, say, a person could get 100 times, 1,000 times the attention that they're getting. In fact, and then they then action of the attention they currently have. Are we supposed to know we do our thing? It's like I've came up with it's like I came up with a political sort of use. I guess the view is really pink on those apparently, because whether you're saying left or right or something else other than the general concept. And people see a video. People see a video has a lot of views. That also factors in. watch it through if a lot of people have seen it. But if someone's the first person to see a video, they will say, "Oh, I'm the first," or "This is so good, I watched it twice." It's like you should respond to me more because see it or something, But
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I'll tell you what, the internet has been an interesting experiment with human social interactivity. Absolutely, it's done some interesting things, and I think we'll continue to do some interesting things of revealing ourselves to ourselves.
Well, it's like, again, it's like the idea of path working instead of just taking a couple things and coming up with a ritual. Is that just like involving yourself with other people? It's like things get accomplished that even if you're doing it on your own, you would probably would have never done it, or probably would have never thought of it if this other person wouldn't have happened to bring it about. And I guess I'll ask another question. How much time do you think can be spent daily on spiritual or religious practice?
So the complication with that is that it all seems to merge into spiritual and magical practice. That as I'm chopping vegetables for dinner, I'm connecting with my ancestors. I'm imbuing the food with the energy and the intention that I want it to have in my body. And in the ideal state, I would like to say that all of my waking time, at least, but that's the ideal. Realistically, I would say probably 8 to 10 hours a day. Where I do this for a living, it definitely gives me the direction to be able to just dive into this fully. So, wake up around 6 o'clock and do my morning meditation, and I definitely consider my exercise routine to be magical, and it definitely is a magical routine. Something that I actually took to Azazel and asked for his input on it. He helped me develop it. So having basically from 6 o'clock a.m. till about 6, 7, sometimes 8 p.m., I am in a magical state. I'm somehow engaging in magic and the unseen and the mysterious in some way or another. And that's 5 days a week. I take weekends off of my job of magic, but I still approach my personal spiritual practices, whatever I'm engaged in with the path working or meditation. I always try to keep something on my plate that I'm doing for my own personal edification. And so on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'll do. I'd say probably it's still the undercurrent is still there though. While I'm out shooting my bow, I'm getting into archery. I'll go out and shoot my bow, and it's a magical thing. I'll visualize, and I'll feel the energy of the kinetic energy before it escapes the bow. So everything kind of gets imbued with magic, but on a conscious participatory level, I would say on the weekends probably 2 hours maybe.
Okay, well that's the next question. Yeah, for me it started to build up, I guess. But I guess I first had to let go of my old. I compare. I guess I thought of that myself as religious back then. I don't really think of that as such. I'd go to church on Sunday. That would be a few hours, and then in the middle of the week, was it Wednesday? I think. And I'd read a few pages of scripture or something before going to bed. But I've since I've replaced it with something a little more standard, a few minutes every couple hours. Sort of like what the Dalai Lama sort of says, it's better than hours of meditation is to meditate. Not where I got it from, but that next thing I guess was you sleep a third of your time, and you really don't think of this until you actually try to experience it, and it's like, and that's put in, and then you try to add some meditation, and you try to, certainly some things are, it can all be part of this regulation, neutrality, or whatever one wants to call it. What things do you think would be hard to do in the name of our in
I think probably the hardest, the most difficult thing, this is along the lines of an abstinence, I guess. Something to avoid is the avoidance of magic for spiritual growth, which I've done mainly when stepping onto different right-hand path workings and undertakings, where things like sorcery are antithesis of the system itself. Putting the power of magic to the side and not calling on it when I need it is very, very difficult. And I did that for a couple years straight, and it was a couple years of being shackled, absolutely shackled. And so for me, that would be the most difficult sacrifice, would be to sacrifice magic itself for a spiritual gain. Luckily, I've been able to discover and develop a path that doesn't require that.
Well, for about half of 2011, I was sort of reluctant, because it's like I wanted my practices to cause me to have to feel a certain way, rather than doing them just like I had been up in devotion and all that sort of stuff. But so it kind of buried me, because I didn't want to. I want to feel a little bit better, so I'm going through that. But I guess one of the difficult things. Initially, you're super addicted to all sorts of stuff. You're eating and everything else. It's these things. It's not part of one's spirituality, and then you're trying to bring. Not that I'm chanting from the bathroom. That's kind of weirded me out sometimes. Bathroom, and then you hear some. I don't know, because there's so many different languages that people speak, and you don't even know what's going on in there. But you can kind of dedicate that practice to it too. So that's kind of a difficult thing. I think for me was that that's what I left it there. But
no, and I'll tell you what. There's a huge value in learning the discipline of walking meditation, and a lot of people will imagine that walking meditation would be as simple as walking in this peaceful Zen garden while you're chanting, and that's not necessarily. That's the first step of it for sure. But the evolution of that is that you go walking into the world. You go walking, for myself and for the mentor that taught me, walking through the streets of Las Vegas, and not a good part of Las Vegas either. And keeping yourself in that transcendental mind state, and not the trick is to not ignore this world, but to absorb it, to experience it, and honor it as it is, and keep yourself in that. There's just a buzz. There's a buzz that occurs in deep states of meditation and in ritual, and whenever you're engaging spirituality, you'll have there's just this buzz, this shift that occurs within yourself that you can feel on a physiological level. And if you can keep that and carry it into your day with you, it can be intense. One of the most one of the times that I meditate the most is when I'm driving. If I'm on a highway and I don't have to pay too much attention, I'll pull my beads off my wrist and start performing, just mantra japa, and just start diving into it, or focusing on, focusing my mind on an imaginary point that exists down the road just a bit, and still being able to watch the road and not crash into anything, but at the same time fully immerse myself into the other, because the thing is the other world is not the other world. It's here. You don't need to turn your attention away from this world in order to understand the other worlds. You can merge them both, but what that requires is that you become the bridge between them, that you observe both simultaneously. And people have a hard time locking their mind simultaneously on two supposedly oppositional ideas.
Well, definitely one of the things that I've experienced and kind of are the seven or the 10 or 12 whatever planes and whatnot. It's, you know, the idea of you don't necessarily have to invoke or evoke anything. You know, these realms are overlapping anyways, and they're here. It's, you know, anything other than yourself, I guess is the term, and you become aware of it. You can't, you know, things being attracted. Definitely experience some of that. Like I don't know what. I think it was 9 years ago. It was a spring equinox. I don't know what these people did. I don't know what quite happened there, but there was this clearing of the park where some other people at other times would do rituals. Something else was done there. It was like a bunch of black birds and all sorts of stuff. But once we did our regular, once a couple of us did well, anyway, kind of shifted over, and it kind of felt like both things happened. That something was repelled and something came. But
yeah. You know, one of the techniques that I learned right immediately after I left my practice of Haitian Balan, I was working with these nameless entities, and one of the things they would teach me is a simple hand gesture, which is you hold your left hand palm down, closed, your right hand palm up, open. You're waiting to receive the blessings that are coming to you. You're asking the spirits for something. And then as you visualize the end result that you desire, you slowly reverse both hands, so that way you are not wanting to receive, you are receiving with your left hand, but also at the same time, you're letting go of something with your other hand. You're letting go of the past. You're closing one door in order to open another door. And being able to lock onto both of those simultaneously, and allow your physical motion just to mimic what's going on internally is it seems to be helpful.
You know, part of what you said was what I was thinking, is because the seeding element was definitely one of the things I was thinking. It's like you've heard of, you know, particularly the food and the drink sort of ceremonies. A fragment will be kept for the next batch, or you have a temple built, and you have it's like, I actually have a piece. Well, actually, I have pieces actually technically from these series of boards here that are actually from another temple. They cut off, so I kept some of it for, well, I mean, for this physical use, and for, you know, I guess remembrance of that thing. What was I thinking? So are these guides? Are they all? Experience them as inner or outer only?
As both. So usually, the way that I've kind of noticed myself engaging with this is I'll begin with extreme externalization, and then I'll end with extreme internalization. And so the first manifestation that these beings take is usually an extreme external form, as far as there is a planting of the seed, that for some reason something happens that leads me towards these beings almost all the time. And so as I react to that and follow that trail of breadcrumbs to find the entity, I immerse myself in their identity, figure out who they have been historically, get to know their personality, and from study alone. And then as I'm doing that, it's like the bridge is gapped between the internal and the external just a bit, because the study, the intellectual immersion, starts to trigger an actual knowing of that personality. That it's not just I'm reading this about Azazel or so and so said this about Azazel, but I start to feel and hear his voice and his presence in the things that I'm studying and encountering. And then I'll usually, once again, I'll start out pretty externalized, where I'll do scrying sessions or evocation or something where I'm going to contact it as an external being. If I pursue any of these worthwhile spirits long enough, that they do tend to, that does tend to flip-flop, where I find that it becomes that I consume that spirit, I digest it, and it becomes a part of me wholly, that there's never a matter of having to call it again, that it's just always there wherever I am.
Well, one of the things, I guess, with a lot of the things that people talk about these things like they're guides, and for the most part, I don't experience these beings as guides. I've, there's something to interact with during. Oh, it's doing with you. That's your sense of what's going on. Like, but you don't know quite what it's going, but it's like, or like a friend per se, I guess, is like, oh, not that I'm lonely and I can phone somebody up or something. I usually don't end up thinking.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I'm not sure if I've still got you there.
Oh, yeah, there's been some thunder and stuff. I was saying that the the holy, unholy, whatever you want, people want to say about the metaphysical, not just projection sort of beings, is that most of the ones that I've encountered, I really kind of don't think of them as guides. Even, I guess, well, there's been some that have, like, I've seen them do a ritual or something, and then I've kind of remembered and wanted to read something, and I kind of put it down. I consider those guides, but for the most part, I don't consider them as guides. I consider them as just something that shows up and joins in there.
Yeah, and I think that we can. It can be helpful in moments to see them as gods and to approach them as such, and to devote ourselves to them. But the end goal, I think, always ought to be to become them. I mean, that's the reason that we exist in this field, I think, of being able to communicate, contact, and bring these beings into our reality is to become like them. And I think the reverse is true, that they at the same time are trying to become more like us, that we have a tethered evolution.
Well, certainly one of the things in Egypt, just like pretty much everywhere else, if one looks at it, is except the stereotypical West, I guess, is that people would call on, whether it's one divinity of divinities by particular names and qualities, to, in the Confucian sort of way of ritual of establishing these character traits in ourselves and maintaining them. It's a Confucian idea of rituals, the establishment and the maintaining, not so much on the now that it's fine to just worship, but it's the that was the focus. So so what would your favorite attributes of divinity be?
My favorite attribute of divinity. I mean, that shit is interesting. I just did a video that I just barely turned over to Timothy today to put up, or last night. I mean, he should be putting that up hopefully in the next couple of days. But it focuses on this, that shifts for where I'm at with my own process, I guess, my own evolution, my own place in life. Whatever that I'll cycle through these. Sometimes I'll be completely invested in omnipresence, and that does seem to be the most interesting thing to me right now. Is not actually, it's the opposite of omnipresence, because omnipresence is the expansion of your eternal self into or expansion of your finite self into infinite being. The opposite of that is what's very interesting to me at this point, is to take your infinite self and focus it into a singularity within yourself, but not losing your eternal nature, not disconnecting from yourself as the source of reality, but maintaining that while focusing and acting as a prism for that in the here and now, and that's a state that it's hard to maintain. It's hard to maintain and go about life in general, do the mundane things. But it is the interesting point to try to reach, is not necessarily to reach out and further out of the bounds of myself, but actually to do the opposite, to become more firmly in place here and now.
Well,
Which would,
one of the things about your stereotypical Kabbalistic thinking, I guess, or at least my perception of the ideal is, you're traveling these paths inside your body, and it can have these, stretched out from every direction, and then when you put the themes of the cards, like, and the one prepares you for the other, but it's like you can see the light or the darkness or whatnot moving through the different, within the center, or and the one prepares you for the other, like the chariot. This was my opening initiation, I guess, other than my laying on of hands and that sort of thing when I was younger. Was that I'm not this body, I'm not these roles, I'm not this, but I have to operate it. So that it gets you ready for the devil and the star and other stuff along the way.
yeah, one so much of I mean, all right, so really the magical explosion that occurs, that sends a shock wave through reality, and as it moves through reality, it seems to rearrange how that reality appears to the observer. That all is a fraction of a moment. Everything else is leading up to that. Everything else is preparation, priming yourself for that moment. So, yeah, no, there's a whole lot of gearing ourselves up for the things, that the actual experience. The actual experience is instantaneous. I think the thing that is interesting to dive into is the way that these beings that do not exist in physical reality, the way that they perceive time, especially the more transcendent of them, seem to perceive time as a dot, and that's an interesting thing to get your mind into. Is that everything that has and will and is occurring, that it's all a finite moment. Once again, a singularity. The singularity state is a very interesting concept to meditate on.
Are there any limits you ascribe to divinity?
I'm sorry, you broke up again on the last part of that. Any limits to what?
Any limits that you would ascribe to divinity?
To the divine, I guess I could say the limit is its Well, I don't know. I think divinity is a tricky word. That's a trap word right there. There are no limits to individual potential, and we could call that divinity if we wanted to make that stretch. And there are no limits. The limit of the divine is that it has the power seemingly to create, and that its creations then are doing the rest of the work. And so there's almost like a seeding effect, that the seeds are planted, but then from there, it's all on all the gardeners to make sure the garden grows. And there are a whole lot of gardeners out there, whether we're talking about demons, angels, elementals, whatever. There are systems and functions in place that are running, that are doing the work. Whereas it does seem that the divine itself is reliant, heavily reliant on its creations to experience for it. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start with a more joke one, which is serious, or like, I don't know if you've ever seen something like this in a bathroom. You see some of things like, God has made God has made Christians to be stewards of the earth, and that includes bathroom stalls. And
when I find that when I enter into a more ascendant state of mind and state of being, that even simple things like picking up after yourself is a spiritual act. That just or picking up after others. I'll tell you what, I spend a lot of time in nature, and I pick up a lot of trash, a disgusting amount of trash, and that can be a spiritual act. Everything, but then again, eating food, eating food, or doing anything, can be translated as a spiritual or magical act if you're fully participating on it in multiple levels, I think. So.
So what's something else that you would do in the name of that, or as part of one's spirituality that one hasn't mentioned thus far?
Well, I think I don't know about what hasn't been mentioned so far, but one of the what's popping to mind, and I'm sure I've already touched on this several times, is the experience of life. As a confession, I often will find myself in my temple for longer periods than I maybe need to be. That there's an outside world, a whole reality that exists, that my magic should be influencing, informing, and making better. There is that desire, impulse to retreat from the world and to just live in this world of magical operation, which you can, but it seems a lot more useful to take the magical operation out of the temple and take it to the standard default reality and change default reality with that. And so that is, I think, the enjoying the fruits of your magic is one of the most important parts of the magic. That your life does need to be reflecting that. Your circumstances should provide you enjoyment, and the more enjoyment you can receive, it is a really interesting feedback loop that tells you whether you're actually doing anything or not. That is the major line in the sand. Is how are you benefiting from any of this? If you're not, maybe magic's not for you. But if magic is for you, then you're going to start seeing your life unfolding and your opportunities of enjoyment increasing.
Well, the breaking of suffering is definitely a way of understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else you want to say about what you believe about deity, divine, that things?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the final thing that I have to say on that subject is once again goes back to the whole concept of limitation, and I don't remember where I picked this up from. I get the feeling it was from Hans Welz. Could be wrong though. Karl Hans Welz. I do think that it was from his work, one of his books on demonology. Anyways, the statement is that there's nothing greater than what I can become. And so when we look at these entities and these forces that we interact with, and even when we're dropped to our knees in humility next to their power and their glory, that there is nothing greater than what I can become, that too is within my kingdom. And so yeah, I think that's the final thought I'd have on that. And I'm not sure how your schedule is looking for the rest of this conversation, or if you had to dive out or not.
Um, I don't think so. I don't think so as of yet. I, I've left a message saying, let me give me a 5-minute warning, and I haven't received that. So I'm gonna.
Well,
I accidentally had this on private, so I put that on. I put this on public. So, but I suppose things can be watched later. Okay, um.
I do have about 15 minutes. And I apologize for starting late and all of that, but I do have about 15 minutes before I do have to go take care of some business. So we can definitely spend the next 15 minutes hitting whatever questions are appropriate.
Yeah. One thing you said reminded me of. Now I do think people want a meaning and all that of life, but you said that the experience of life, and yeah, that's what's been left out. It's like when you look at what people, even very enriched traditions of teaching you how to better experience and understand your rich rest of your life, people are like, it's all about uh, the black and white, right, wrong, and even where there's degrees of things, they're kind of even ignoring the degree, sort of looking at things. And
yeah. I mean, once again, the enjoyment of life, the simple statement "be here now" is a powerful one to embrace. As I would deal with Azazel in my initial working with him, I would find that I was always trying to soul travel to him, or see him more clearly, and he'd always remind me, come back to where you're at, come back to this world, to yourself, experience what's happening, experience what's happening. It's easy to, especially I think, especially for the magician who has that strong Neptunian influence. It's easy to get lost in the analysis of what's happening and the meaning of what's happening. And while you're doing that, you're missing out on what's actually happening.
do you experience deja vu?
Deja vu? Yeah, oh yeah. Sometimes I'll experience deja vu in extreme degrees where at one point I estimated that about 25-30% of my waking life was a deja vu experience. So yeah, no, I've definitely experienced it. And I don't know, once again, I don't know what it means. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas about what it means. I don't know that I've been able to find any, nail down any specific idea of what the meaning of it is. But can I pause for just 1 second? I to go run real quick. I'll be right back. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, you mentioned a sense. A sense as if someone died or something. I've experienced that. Have you? You say that you've encountered the dead?
Yeah, I've encountered the dead. I think first, kind of accidentally, in doing rituals at night in graveyards as a teenager. You know, just trying to enhance the spooky factor of the whole thing. I noticed pretty quickly that when you go home, there seem to be these shades that I don't want to say they attach themselves to you, but they seem to follow. And so I think that was my first real encounter with spirits of the dead was just having a couple experiences of coming home from a graveyard and realizing that I had these icky things that were around me. And then I've had, like I said, my grandmother, and I've had a couple instances of people who are recently deceased that shortly after or at the same time of their deaths that I've had a spark that's lit up with them coming to say something or pass on some message or whatever. It got tricky for me for a bit in shutting that down. Once you start talking to the dead, it seems like all the dead come and they start wanting to talk to you, and so it can be a tricky valve to close.
You mentioned the word miracle. You've witnessed. How would you define a miracle? If
Yeah, you know what? Well, I think when we look at magical manifestations of things, most of the time it's a chain of coincidence that you perform the ritual. Let's say a love spell. I perform a love spell on this pretty young lady that I've been attracted to, and then the night that I perform the ritual, somebody happens to say something to her about me, and then it trickles down. It's a chain of dominoes that can all be dismissed as coincidence. Now, a miracle, on the other hand, in my view, is something that you can't find that chain of coincidence. That it is something happened, like a Shabda moment, a lightning thunderbolt that struck and changes everything, or changes something, or maybe doesn't change anything. Maybe it just happens, and you go, "Holy shit, what was that?" And I've had experiences like that for sure, where once again there's no chain of causality that something wasn't there and then it was, or whatever. So yeah. No, I've experienced that a lot, and it kind of points towards the malleability of this realm. Really, the physical world is not nearly as solid as we assume.
have you had a near-death experience?
Oh man, I don't know that I would say it near death. I mean, I've had a couple like close calls, specifically with swimming. I've never been a great swimmer, even to this day. And so I've had a couple close calls where I've started drowning and have been pulled out of the pool as a child. But I mean, no like darkness and tunnel of light or anything like that. And so no. I mean, nothing that I would say was a near-death experience. Nothing even close. Aside from soul travel, I mean, soul travel and dimethyltryptamine, I think, are the two times that I get closest to the Bardo realm.
Well, and the interesting thing is there's ways to up your levels of DMT. Is like waking up in the last third between dusk and dawn, and a little extra thing, and trying to get sleep in before that. That can kind of help. Actually do some extra ritual or something at that time can certainly help. And then there's those little tricks like, mirrored Ima, or am I dreaming, or touching doors and focusing on how you're reacting, and all that. Wait, that's lucid dreaming. Something, but you were going to say something. I had it.
Oh, I lost it. I'm not sure what it was, but I lost it.
Out of body experiences. So you've had ascending, descending. What have you had?
I would say projecting forth. I mean, all right. So it might be helpful to clarify my understanding of cosmology. Is that I do see reality as being a wave emanating from a source, and as such, the waves become more solid as they travel outwards, and the most solid reality, the most solid dimension that we know of is the physical realm, and so that means we are on the very outskirts of existence. We are as far away from God or source as anything can get. This is the undiscovered, territory, and so it's only ascent. There is only an ascending pattern in either way that we see it, really, because you travel towards source, and that could be ascending as getting back into the center. But at the same time, even the outflow into this reality is an ascent, because it is an evolution of the spiritual state. So only ascending, but yeah, definitely projecting forth would be the best way to say it. Because first off, I've never ever had good luck doing any kind of astral projection or soul travel while laying down.
Well, one of the things that I've it's like I've heard, not until I experienced it. It's like, okay, up and out and around, that sort of thing. But the sinking into, and I wasn't even trying, the descent past the floor and all that. And that turns out to be a lot more common than I thought. But I don't even remember hearing about it until I experienced it myself.
Yeah, I've called that. I first experienced that actually when I was at church. I was at church as a young man, watching the speaker speak, and letting my vision just kind of drift off. I was bored. Whatever he was talking about was not that captivating, and I started seeing a light develop around him. His aura became visible. I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and that was the first time I had seen an aura or anything like that. And I remember the feeling was intense of not necessarily like the floor dropped out from underneath me, but more like my chair or my whole body started sinking, but not just back and down, to the side as well. A complete loss of proprioception. And it only lasted for a second. I pulled myself out and went, oh, that was not pleasant. And I experienced it spontaneously a few more times before I started realizing that was a physiological trigger. Once you've experienced that, it is so easy to get back to that state. Once you've experienced it a couple times, enough to be familiar with it and to not be scared of it, then you can induce any magical or spiritual state you really want to.
Yeah, I found like some of these drug-like highs take even a few months to experience for the first time, but once you experience that, I'm not familiar if you, I'm not sure if you know the makeup of soma. I don't mean the prescription drug. I mean, basically they mash up marijuana, drip some opium and ephedra in the thing, and if you're Persian, you get up to 37 other things, which some of them enhance, some of them are nutritional, whatever, but you can kind of mix that level of feeling, or the sort of energy, these things. But if you've never experienced it, once you can deliberately twice, then it's like, oh yeah, give me 15 minutes and I'll do it again. or 10 or 5 or whatever it takes, you know.
Yeah, no, and I have, it sounds like what you're describing is being drawn from a lot of the Halma recipes rather than Soma. I mean, they're basically, similar mythologies and backgrounds and all that, but I have played with, I guess play is not a bad word. I tend to shy away from it, but really Shakti's essence and nature is a playful essence. So I have played with Halma recipes, a couple of them involving ephedra extracts and marijuana, and I've not utilized opium at all in it, but the simple recipes that I have found are very, very potent in accessing internal gateways, it seems.
Well, yeah, and mix things, but and sometimes I guess it may help that if one switches over to doing this without the drugs at once, but not that these things the drugs come with. It's like battery acid and brake fluid. No way.
Yeah, no, that's.
But it's like that same. When you have surgery or something and they give you just a little more than you need, and it's like that sort of thing. But I've had some horrible experiences with medication. One time my heart rate was like 185 by the time they got me down. And another time it was like it's like they talk about lethal injection. That's one of the worst ways to go if they overdose you on some sort of painkiller or something. It's like, no, that's like having a heart attack. I don't hear of anybody saying, "Oh, I had a heart attack. It was awesome."
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I'll tell you what, entheogens have gotten a really, really bad reputation, undeservedly so. When you look at the LD50 of just about any hallucinogen is ridiculously high. Basically what that means is the higher, the LD50, the more that you're going to have to take to reach where 50% of the population reaches a lethal dose. And the LD50 for LSD, DMT, psilocybin is so high that a human being would be hard pressed to consume enough of it to do any damage.
Well, I think the most damage that when it comes to the drug use is just like a lot of things, completely removing it from any spirituality, any value. That's when it becomes the most dangerous for oneself or society. Is that even the hardcore tobacco shamans, long-term illness doesn't sound like it was or is as common as it is of your typical person who goes off to the convenience store and buys a pack on his way home or something.
And that's and I'll tell you what, this is something that I'd like to touch on, and then I'll have to unfortunately wrap up, and we'll continue this intriguing conversation. Hopefully, I think we've already kind of discussed a date for the next one, but the smoking thing is interesting. I'll smoke set it right here. I'll smoke a pipe. I'll puff on a pipe from time to time, mostly when I'm having conversation. It's an interesting hand-eye movement distraction thing. But I used to puff cigarettes like no other, a pack a day, and just suck them down. The mindlessness is really interesting. You don't. When I'm smoking, when I take a puff off of this pipe, just about all the time, I take a puff and I can feel it burning my tongue a little, and I can feel the smoke in my mouth. And as I exhale it, there are so many different sensations that are occurring that are so enjoyable. And without cigarettes, just didn't have that enjoyment, or at least it stopped having that enjoyment. But it still had the effect of making me want to do it for no apparent reason. But in smoking one day, I had my yogi friend tell me. I said, I'm going to go out and have a cigarette real quick. And he goes, "Oh, you mean pranayama?" And I, well, what do you mean? He goes, he goes, that's the draw of smoking, is that it gives you a reason to go take deep breaths and exhale slowly. And maybe instead of lighting a cigarette, you can just go out and breathe. And that's an interesting concept on its own. And then the Native American concept, at least with some tribes at least, of taking the smoke into your mouth, and while it's inside of you, you focus your mind on the intention and the prayer that you have, and then you release that prayer. And obviously that's a possible metaphor for the magical process, but it's also a ritual. And so what you're thinking about while you're engaged in that ritual possibly could manifest, which means that if you're thinking as you smoke a cigarette, oh, I hate my job, I hate my life, and blah, 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 because that does seem to be, when you're using cigarettes or anything as a stress relief, you're focusing a lot of times on that stress itself as you're performing the action. And if there is a magical benefit to tobacco, which I think that there is, then you're corrupting that with your unfocused mind. That as you're puffing on that cigarette, you're thinking the things that you think might be able to manifest. And really, I think that if you dwell on something, you can manifest it pretty easily.
So it's like it can completely change. And I've actually noticed the difference between people, if that's, they just came from smoking marijuana or tobacco or something in a shamanistic sort of sense. They're less likely to have these three common emotions you see with pretty much everybody. And they're like, oh, my life's so much better now because I could smoke. But you see anxiety, so you see depression and anger. You see a little glimpse of this on people's faces, and at least the face. And a typical person that exhibits these, it's like you're not even seeing that. But if they focused, and I do see that some of the effects, it's like, freaking out on marijuana is a lot less common when it's given a context. Same thing with LSD and stuff like this, is that if, do it in a ritual, it's directed rather than just, whatever you were trying to put down comes back.
And engaging, once again, engaging the magical value outside of ritual is important, and in maybe engaging the ritual during the ritual. So with that, the way that I quit smoking, and I first off, I built it up to be a lot harder than it was. In my mind, it was, oh, this is going to be so awful. Actually, the anti-smoking campaign, which is funded by the tobacco industry, is a ridiculous brainwashing to get you to continue to smoke. It's going to be so hard. Don't start, because once you started, you're going to be addicted. Now, those kinds of... Oh, go ahead.
One of the things I found is, like, a lot of these things for a long time, they knew a way to get us cold turkey. It's like, I used to have ADHD. Now I can stay still for so long that people don't know whether I've been asleep the past 2 hours or something. It's that, but you some of the, amphetamine class drugs are even worse than the opiate class drugs when you quit them. It's taken it up a notch, but you can quit that stuff cold turkey with the right nutrient or the right, it turns out I have a plant right by a building that can help people with psychiatric medication, and whether it's anti-anxiety class or whether it's the amphetamine class, both those you quit cold turkey without side effects if you just take this herb for a couple of weeks or something. And they used to tell you with alcohol that if you quit alcohol right away, it would kill you, but turns out that even thousands of years ago, people knew how to quit.
Right. Well, that the prognosis and diagnosis is often worse than the illness. You get these just the idea, this is going to be hard for you. Why would you do that to yourself? I actually found this with YouTube. My business partner Timothy was helping me arrange doing YouTube Live, and for the first few of them, I just had such a hard time managing the settings between YouTube and my broadcaster app. And I couldn't figure out what the problem was. And so I get hold of Timothy, and he helps walk me through it. And I'm going, geez, I just can't do this. I can't understand this. And he's like, whoa there. You don't do that to yourself. He goes, first off, I need you to just take a breath and remind yourself that you can do anything. Like, this is absolutely possible. Millions of people are doing live casts. So don't nix it. And that's a huge thing. I do rock climbing, and I noticed pretty early on that, though I was pointed out to me pretty early on, that as I would call all of my falls, meaning that I would start to reach for my next handhold. I say, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to fall. And sure enough, that's when I fall. And so the guy who was teaching me how to do this is, change your self-talk. Instead of saying I'm going to fall, every time you get that impulse, say I've got this. And I'll tell you what, the just changing the way that, just reframing this, it's the same reality. It's the exact same reality. It's just reframing the way we're interacting with it.
Speaking of Timothy, we haven't seen any videos with him for a while. Why's that?
He prefers, well, for one, I think he prefers to be behind the scenes a bit. He leaves the limelight to those of us attention whores that love it. But at the same time, even if he really wanted to, that guy is so busy he has no time to jump on and make his videos. He's managing all of my products, all of my everything. He manages that, as well as Aztzm Mason and Bill Kzvnfdm, and we're bringing on some other authors that are coming on, and all of our consultations. So he's behind the scenes for basically an army of people. So he has kind of pigeonholed himself into being very, very busy and really being unavailable to create his own stuff right now, unfortunately. We are working towards a greater autonomy within our system itself, so that way both of us can breathe a little more easily with our schedules. But yeah, so one part is preference and the other part is necessity.
Well, one of the things that I guess necessity was that for months, actually for about a year, I don't know what, I think I did the same thing when I first set up a month ago, was that for a month, for a year, and I asked for help, and I didn't end up getting help. Whenever I tried to set up one of these things, it was like something about monkeys and show them this code, and I'm like, they're putting that there just to, it's supposed to be something very easy, and I don't know what in the world is different. I think I always did, but now it's working every time. But I guess you said you had to go, and I've been holding someone up, so I guess I thought of in the middle was saying that some of the Sufis have latched on, was that an hour meditation is better than a year of mindless devotion. And I guess for a close, I have you're free to go if you want to. But I'm going to close with the Daemoniacus Vmmh chant that I have got for the 10 Goetia Kings Bael, Paemuwn, Beeleet, Purson, Gaap, Aeshma Daeva, Winnie, Balan, Zagan, and Beliyael. So, Yzvo, Ormzm Gzhz, qvwzm Orzxs Gzhz, Dvso, Yvovgs, hvxliv, qvxliv, Ormzm Gzhz,
Hvxliv Ormzm Gzhz Orzxs Gzhz Dvso Zagam Gzhz Hvxliv Aztzm Gzhz Orzxs Gzhz Dvso Orzxs Hvxliv Ormzm Gzhz qvwzm Orzxs Gzhz Dvso Yvovgs qvxliv Ormzm Gzhz Hvxliv Zbvi Orzxs Gzhz Hvxliv Aztzm Gzhz Orzxs Gzhz Hvxliv Yzvo Ormzm Gzhz qvwzm Qvnfdm Orzxs Gzhz Dvso Yvovgs qvxliv qvxliv Gzhz tazak Hvxliv Dvso.
I feel warmness, like something is beside me on both sides here. And in the floor, in the southwest, inside the dressers on the floor, something about the size of a cat. I can't see it, but it's out of my view. On the ceiling, I sense something, something purpley and kind of pointy. That's it.
Very interesting. No, thank you. I think that was a.
I'm getting a touch of the shakes right now too.
No, it's very cool. Very cool. And then I appreciate that invocation for sure. You know, you did that last time, and this time as well. At both times, it's had a lulling effect. It lulls you into the state. So no, thank you. That was beautiful.
And of course, for people who subscribe or whatnot, when I figure out more of the meaning and stuff, obviously some things appear under different entities' names. So I think more meaning or something's coming, but for the very least, I got something wrong.
No, I'll tell you what, the deciphering of the symbol is always is ongoing. It's ongoing for sure. What we receive in the moment of contact is a flash. Sometimes it takes years to unravel what that flash means.
So I guess I will bid you adieu, and
thank you. It's a wonderful conversation. It was awesome talking to you, and we've got another one queued up. So we'll. I'm excited to jump on and chat with you some more at that point, and we'll just keep it rolling until we knock out these questions and maybe even come up with some more.
well, I came up with some more, so because I guess I got standard ones, but I knew I had something somewhere, so I brought that. I guess we'll do that next time.